We've been exploring this idea of board game tactica. Yes, we're immersing ourselves in the narrative. There's this story, and we're sitting down to roll some dice, move some miniatures, flip some cards, and have fun together. But the tactica of a particular gaming system means I'm looking at the rules and I'm looking to see how they work and the flow that they work. So this way I can make those tactical decisions or hopefully good decisions if I'm going for tabletop glory. So the two kind of go hand in hand. And in this vlog, building on that framework, I wanted to explore the idea of player elimination. What happens when your character dies? And what's some examples of good game design or not so good game design? How do we mitigate that? How do we deal with it? I'm going to be illustrating Runebound 2nd Edition. This is a game that I've played for a long time. I continue to play. It's one of the most played games in my board game collection. I am one of those board gamers that tracks every play and every expansion and then enters it into an Excel sheet so I can kind of track those elements and the win-loss and just, I don't know, it's something that we do. Runebound is up there with the top 5, both solo play, friends and family play, and bringing it to the gaming club play. So I am well familiar with the mechanics and the rules and places where it works really well and it's exciting, and other places where, okay, it falls a little bit flat. And that's not a criticism of Runebound. Every game is a narrative simulation. Every game, even the tightest rule sets, some things they do well, some things not that well. Now, the narrative of Runebound is it's a fantasy overland adventure game. There's encounters, there's monsters to fight. The background is the High Lord, the High Dragon Lord is being resurrected and threatening the realm. You, as a hero, have decided to challenge the Dragon Lord. And you need to defeat the Dragon Lord or stop the return by gathering runes by fighting their minions. Essentially, you start out green quests, which are pretty easy, get you some pocket gold and help level up, get some experience. Then they go to yellow. There's a couple of boss monsters there, primary actors that you have to fight in the narrative as it resolves. Then we go to blue. It looks blue to me. Well, it looks a little bit more purple in my copy. Those are now like the lieutenants of the Dragon Lords. And then the red encounters, there's not that many. They are the most potent and most powerful. Now, in a game like this, there's no end track timer. Runebound 3rd Edition, there's a timer. You have X number of turns to prepare before the end game, before the boss is triggered and you have to fight them. Runebound 2nd Edition, there's no timer. I can grind forever and ever and ever, get jacked up, get super statted up, get geared up, go in there, and before I even roll any dice, I'm at like plus 30, with my attributes and gear. Well, what prevents that is the fact the mechanic of the game is a competition race-based game. It's competitive. You're all trying to stop the main Dragon Lord, but the first player to do it wins and gets all the glory. And Fritz loves the tabletop glory. Yes, I want to stop the realm from falling, but what would be better is if I stop the realm from falling and they honor me as an immortal tabletop champion. So with this, what you see is you're playing not only against the game mechanics, but you're playing against the mechanics of the other players. I need to keep an eye on what you're doing. If you get a couple of lucky rounds and you make some good tactical decisions, you might be in a position where you're going to make a run for the end game. I'm technically not really ready yet, but you know what? I got to go for it because you're going to take it. So what this means is anything that causes you to lose turns, to lose gear, to lose any progress is almost fatal, is almost absolutely fatal. Game mechanics that I really dislike, lose a turn, right? Some magical effect happens to you, lose a turn. That's huge in games like this because now I've lost a turn over a game that's 30, 40, 60, 80 turns. If it adds up, if I lose 10, 15 turns, if I lose like 1/8 of the game where I can do nothing, that's fatal. I prefer game mechanics that if you're going to hit me with some sort of penalty, have me not move as much, have me re-roll a die, have me take, instead of 3 actions, 2 actions for a turn. Penalize me, yes, for the narrative, but give me some sort of decision-making process. I don't like games that's just miss a turn. It very rarely fits that. It's kind of almost like the easy way out for the narrative. But I understand why some game designers would do that, because you have various effects. You've been charmed, you've been set aside, right? There's a storm, miss a turn. In Runebound, when you get knocked out, it really is fatal. What happens when you get knocked out is you lose all your gold. Now, the primary way to get gold, quests, but mainly fighting monsters. You lose all your gold. You lose your best gear. You lose your most expensive, in terms of gold, to purchase item or an ally. Now, I can get around that in Runebound 2nd Edition. And again, we're looking at Runebound to understand the framework of the mechanics. I mean, yes, we're talking Runebound tactics, but really this is to illustrate so you can port over into the board game that you're exploring and look for this similar ideas. In Runebound, you've got items, weapons, armor, magic artifacts, potions, things like that. And then you have allies that you can hire. So essentially kind of like a little mini party. When you die, when you get knocked out, you lose your highest item or your highest ally. I'm going to choose the ally. I'm going to buy a 1 gold. Allies are 1, 2, 6, 8, 10, 12 gold. I'm going to spend the 1 gold ally. That's who I'm going to lose. So I can negate that. You lose experience tokens. You want to fight, you get an experience token when you trade in X number, depending on the game variant, and you level up. Those, I could lose, but usually as soon as you get your experience tokens, you're spending them. But the main thing is the gold. Gold is so important in Runebound because you get it by fighting, risk versus reward. Now, there's a couple of quests and things like that, but the gold you use to buy gear, that's not only going to augment your stats, but lets you attack before combat, lets you negate damage, gives you special powers. It's massive. You get knocked out once or twice, you might not be coming back, especially since some of the more powerful items that you want to acquire, they're 15 gold. They're 10 gold. They start at 9 gold. That's 4, 3, or maybe 2 super powerful fights if you lose that. So what this means is you go into the game realizing that I don't want to get knocked out. So I have to be hyper aware of the challenges, and I have to be hyper aware, can I realistically win this? This is where we're coming into averages. Now, I have one friend. Doesn't matter what the game is. He's hotness on the dice. No joke. I'm 100% serious. The dice gods have blessed him. We get him on the competitive X-Wing team and we supply him with ships because he just rolls hotness. So we know just having that as a 4th team member, he's just going to be amazing with the rolling the dice. But that said, you can get lucky. I'm going to take that luck. But for the most time, you look and say, okay, if I'm rolling 2d10 for Runebound, the average is going to be 5-5. If I'm a little conservative, 4-4, right? On 2d10, that gives me a base of 8. Then I've got, +3 or +4 for my stats and maybe +2 from my war gear. You have to add this in and beat a certain number. That's being conservative. What this means is when I flip the encounter, you can try to escape an encounter before you fight. You'll take some damage, there'll be a penalty, but you won't potentially be killed or even one-shotted, just killed in one turn like some of the encounters. You really have to look, and this is hard for me a little bit with Tabletop Glory. I flip some of these encounter cards, and there's some cool monsters to fight. There's some glory there. But the rewards are pretty interesting. You get some good gold. You get to take a random object from the market deck. You get to get some more gold and use the card to heal or use it for some sort of movement. You're looking and saying, I really want that card. I want that card, but can I realistically defeat it? This is where a game that has complete knockout mechanics, not like I get knocked out and just discard 1 gold piece, right? A game with true Runebound 2nd Edition hardcore knockout mechanics. You just get wiped. You lose a lot. I have to know, can I beat this encounter? Now, within that mechanic, the reason why you're not just flipping over cards, The way the game works is at different points on the maps, you have an encounter gem. And again, green is easy, yellow, mid-tier, blue or purple is harder, and red is endgame. When you land on one of these spaces from the deck of cards, and they're all random, different monsters, different events, different powers. The deck of encounters is all random. When you flip that card, if you don't defeat it, that gem gets marked with that specific card. It goes down. Every other player now knows where that is. So it's not enough to be just kind of like, well, you know what, I'll encounter a bunch of encounters and I'll escape and see what's on the table and then take them on. You might flip something that you say, well, I'm not really ready for this yet, right? I went for the yellow encounters. I pulled a lieutenant. It's an amazing gold reward. I don't know, 50-50. Never tell me the odds. This is what you have to balance out, right? Exploring that. I might not be able to walk away and be conservative, because if I walk away from that encounter, another player who's similarly going along this track might say, I am ready for that. And that's a nice little gold bump. And I get to get a bonus movement, play the card for some extra movement, for some extra lore, or, some sort of test. I can't let that go. So we see in these type of games with the knockout game, you do need to be a little more conservative. How do you get around it? How do you get around that? How we get that around that is, in theory, I say in theory because I always go for tabletop glory, even if I know the rules, you need to stay topped up on healing the best you can within those mechanics. So I can't be at mid-health or low health. I have to be at high enough health that I can escape or reasonably win the encounter level, which means in Runebound, if it's the beginning of the game, the green encounters, they're the easiest. They're setting up the narrative. They're setting up the quests, giving you some experience. As I get some gold, how you heal in Runebound 2nd Edition is you got to go to one of the cities and pay some gold to heal up. If an average character has 4 or 5 life, most of them have 4. If I take one hit, so I fight a green encounter, I win, I take 1 damage along the way, okay. As soon as I take 2 damage, if it's a second encounter or on that first encounter, 2, at that point, I got to get the heals. Yes, I'm spending the gold to heal rather than purchase war gear. Not quite happy about that, but I don't want to get knocked out and potentially lose some of the war gear that I already have, or lose some experience, or lose the gold that I have. So at any chance, if there's a chance to potentially heal, that's when I do it. The other thing, of course, is to enforce experience discipline, to reasonably, as best you can know, again, Runebound 2nd Edition framework, 3rd Edition's a little different. I'm ready for the green encounters. Once I've leveled up 2 or 3 power-ups, then I'm going to go to the yellows. Not going to do it before. I'm not going to try and go for that glory. I'm not going to try and go for that gold, right? I'm going to tackle them as we go, as needed. So if you're playing game mechanics where the knockout effect truly is brutal and you lose a lot, that adds up. Because Runebound 2nd Edition, and there are times your character gets knocked out, that puts you behind. That adds, you don't lose the turn, but now that puts me behind. If I had an 8 gold Mace of Kelos, which is going to give you +2 damage, it's a solid mid-game weapon. That cost 8 gold. If I lose that, because I don't have an ally to mitigate it, if I lose that, now that means I have to regain 8 gold to purchase a similar item, even though the item's gone. That's potentially 2 or 3 encounters. Okay, that's no big deal. 2 or 3 encounters. Then you're back on top, maybe even get a better item. Yes, but I've lost that gold that I would have earned in 2 or 3 encounters to pile on in addition to, so the other players are that much ahead. Complete knockout game mechanics, you really have to play conservative, keep the heals up, and maintain that discipline with how you play the game within the mechanics.